right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Dental Practice Launch podcast, brought to you by Crimson Media Dental Marketing. And I'm your host, Shane Simmons. Glad to be back here again. And today, we're talking to somebody that I've been kind of watching through the Facebook universe, if you will, or meta universe, whatever we're going to call it these days. And really, as everybody kind of who listens to this knows, we really focus on practice ownership, whether it's a startup, whether it's an acquisition, whatever the case is, and making sure that you're prepared for that and going to set yourself up for success. And the guest here who I brought on today is going to be able to give invaluable insights to our audience when it comes to acquisitions. He is Brian Hanks of Dental Buyer Advocates. Brian, thank you so much, man, for hopping on here. I know you're a busy guy.
Shane, it's an honor to be here. I can't wait to chat with your audience.
Well, today we're going to talk about, number of different topics, but most importantly, I think the common question I get, I'm sure you get it as well, Brian, is what are the things that I need to be doing, looking out for, crossing my T's, dotting my I's when it comes to purchasing a practice. And, like anything in life, my belief is don't try to do this all yourself. Find somebody who can, has experience in doing these things. They're going to save you a lot of headaches, a lot of money in the long run. And that's really kind of a key element I've picked up over the years of being in dentistry. But, Brian, before we dive into some of those things that people need to know when purchasing a practice, in today's economy, in today's world, I always like to just hear a little bit about kind of how you were led down this path. Because to my understanding, you kind of had a financial, accounting type background. Is that right?
It is. I'm a reformed Wall Street guy. So I was doing investments literally in lower Manhattan for Goldman Sachs. I would help people manage their money. I took a job with a dental CPA who also did some investment management. And I was working with all the younger clients. I was helping a lot of associates, a lot of brand new owners, a lot of even a few D4s that were very ambitious. And in loving that process of, helping with their taxes and stock bond portfolio allocation, do I buy the real estate? But what I found was the group of people that's listening to this podcast, that same group of people I was talking to about finances, they had questions about their biggest investment. And of course, their biggest investment is their career, right? It's where they went to school. It's what they're going to do in their practice. And no one out there was teaching in a really cohesive, coherent way the process to either start a practice from scratch or to buy a practice. And so I very creatively titled a book called How to Buy a Dental Practice, and I put it out on Amazon. And I got so many phone calls from that book that I decided, you know what? As much as I love the investment world, as much as I love taxes and talking numbers and spreadsheets, I'm going to specialize in the process of buying a dental practice. So as far as I know, I'm the only guy in the country that says only that. And I take clients through the process of buying a practice, and then when they're done and they own, I send them over to Crimson. I send them over to other folks to help them run that practice effectively. But yeah, I know way too much about buying a practice.
And the book, I was just thinking, is like, that's actually a great book name for SEO value, marketing mind at me. It's just like, that was great. Like, I love that. No, that's fascinating. And so the dental industry, as you know, Brian, it's so interesting because, there's, banks are willing to lend, to dentists for the most part. It's a pretty safe bet from the financing side of things. But in dental school, is kind of, you touched on there a little bit. It's just something that is not taught. It's, you're taught to do dentistry, but, there's more programs now that I'm starting to see maybe do like a dual MBA that you can do in kind of dental school, med school, things like this. But, a lot of times it's just learning from, kind of hard knocks or, learning from others who've been there and done that. And so I'm just curious, what did you see from transitioning out of that Goldman Sachs world and Wall Street to dental? Did you see that big gap there that really needed to be bridged for a dentist who's looking to purchase, or what was that kind of process like for you?
Interestingly, my career in a lot of ways mirrors a lot of dentists. So I was trained to be an amazing employee, an amazing technician. Nobody explained the process of running a business. Now, I would never discourage a dentist from going out and getting more education, especially business education. If you want to go do a dual DDS MBA or DMD MBA, go by all means. I think it's going to be valuable for you. But I will tell you, if the thing you're looking for is boots on the ground, tactical knowledge on how to give employees feedback, how to coach someone, how to delegate to a vendor or an employee, you're not going to find it in an MBA program. So I had the same experience as an employee turned business owner, and now it's fun to coach people through the process of what it takes to A, find, buy, and then C, run a business.
Yeah, and that really kind of leads me into what we want to talk about is today is purchasing a dental practice or going into practice ownership, whether it's a startup, it's an acquisition. Many dentists have that dream of owning their own practice, and I understand that you kind of preach these three different phases to acquiring a practice. However, we were talking, you told me a little bit about there's this secret phase that isn't necessarily mentioned off the top. Let's start there. In the three phases, starting before that, the secret phase, what is that?
Yeah, the secret phase is to be very clear about what you want. And in the hardest part in this whole process is to A, know what you want, and then B, to find a practice to buy. And by the way, I know your audience does a lot of startups. I'm going to just touch on, I'm agnostic. You want to start up a practice, you want to buy a practice. I'm mostly agnostic because both can be great options. Because when I talk with an associate that's been out of school or out at some GPR AGD for a year or two, here's what they tell me they want: money, right? And it's not a greedy thing. What they're talking is, they're saying, Brian, the most pressing problem I have right now is my student loan balance, the lifestyle I want to live, all of those things, which is totally, totally legit. Here's actually what they really want, though. What they're really looking for is control. Okay, now right now, this secret phase 0 is to be very clear about what you want. Ownership is great. I think ownership is wonderful for the money side. I tell people, you want to get out from underneath that mountain of student loans? Your fastest way to do that is to go get as big a practice loan as you possibly can. In other words, go get more in debt. And some dentists' heads explode at that, because what I'm really telling them to do is the fastest way to pay off your student loans is to have money to pay them off. The fastest way to have money to pay them off is to have control over your career and to make money as an owner. Okay, so secret phase 0 is be clear about what you want. And by the way, what you really want is control. Now, right now, it's control over your finances, but ultimately, it's going to be control over who you work with, which insurance companies you do or don't take, where your office is, how many operatories, the equipment you buy or don't buy, whether or not you can fire your admin or your assistant that's terrible or is awesome and keep them, right? Those are the types of things that everybody wants in their career, including dentists. And so be clear about what you want. And then here's the secret. Okay, here's phase 0. Shane, a lot of dentists think, okay, because their career to this point has been so prescribed: biology undergrad, dental school, maybe some residency, job with a DSO that sucked, job with a second DSO that probably sucked. Now they're ready to buy a practice, and they think they're going to hop online just like they have for all of these other steps, and they're going to find a practice to buy, and that's where they get stuck. So secret phase 0 is you got to find a practice. In order to find a practice, you have to have a really robust network of dentists who know, like, and trust you, preferably with some gray hair on their head, so they can either sell you their practice or they can introduce you to a friend that wants to sell you theirs.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely, because it's not like you just go online and go to a Zillow type site and see a bunch of dental practices and have all the numbers and everything ready for you. That's a really good point. And kind of to circle back to what you were talking about of knowing what they want and control. I hear that same thing, every single day when we're talking with new owners or prospective owners. And one of the things that's really been encouraging for me has been hearing more and more about, the culture, that they ultimately want to build, the type of, way they want people to feel when they come to work for them. And it's like, there's so many factors there that, as you mentioned, yes, the financially, you can be more lucrative that way, having the control of your schedule, having the control of your legacy ultimately, but also being able to better those around you is one of the things that I think makes ownership so important and so powerful. So to get to your point though about having that network,
Mhm.
Where does somebody start in that case? Say, they're 2 years out of dental school, they've been working at a DSO, and they're thinking, all right, I really want to in the next year or 2 years, be able to acquire a practice. That is their goal. What's kind of that first step for them as far as getting out there, finding those resources, finding those networks? What's your recommendation, Brian?
My recommendation is build your network indiscriminately. Okay. In other words, try to add as many dentists as you possibly can to your network of people that know, like, and trust you. And here's how you're going to do it, Shane. When people hear the word networking, a lot of times they think schmoozy, business cardy, kind of, they feel slimy saying the word. I get that, and that's not what I mean. What I actually mean is you make a genuine personal connection with another dentist. That's it. Okay. So, but do it indiscriminately. In other words, we're not looking for best buddies. We're not looking for your lifetime godparent for your children. What we are looking for is a long list of dentists that you stay in relatively frequent contact with on a quarterly, maybe semi-annual basis. Okay, so here's how I would do it if I were a D3. I'd open up an Excel spreadsheet, or, you can go the poor man's Google spreadsheet way if you want, but Excel is the greatest tool ever built on planet Earth. And I would open up that spreadsheet and I would list numbers 1 through 100, and I would make it a game with another classmate to see who can add 100 dentists to their personal network fastest. And I might go to, let's say I grew up in Kent, Washington. I really want to move back to the South Sound area of Seattle. Okay, so I'm going to start there, and I'm going to start Googling around to see which dentists are in that area, who impresses me with something on their website, number of Google reviews, the cool equipment they have, the reputation of the equipment rep in the area. And I'm going to reach out to that dentist with this question. Okay? And this question isn't, hey, Shane, you're an amazing dentist. Want to sell me your practice? That's a terrible question, right? And that's not a genuine personal connection with that individual. If, however, the question is, hey, Shane, you look like an amazing dentist. I'm a D3, I'm a D4, I've been out of school for 2 years. I would really like to learn from this thing that you do really well. Would you mind if I gave you a call and picked your brain as the expert on the subject of Google reviews, amazing equipment, cool staff, whatever it is? What dentist is going to say no to that, right? They're going to say, sure, 15 minutes on a Zoom call, a coffee, a phone call, no big deal, absolutely. And now it's just a follow-up game. Every 6 months, every 3 months, you reach out, just wanted to say thanks. How's that thing going we talked about? And then when the time is right, sure, now I've got 100 people that I can ask and say, hey, by the way, I'm looking to buy. If you know anyone in the area selling, I'd be an interested listener, buyer, whatever the case may be. But it's a lot of work, and not a lot of people are willing to do it.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because people love, like, you're almost honored, like, if a young student or somebody fresh out of dental school asks for advice, feedback, anything I can learn from you. Like, people love to help and be a resource. I believe I've never reached out to somebody that I've looked up to and then been like annoyed that I asked for advice or be able to get feedback from them. Usually people are almost honored, that you even thought of them to do that. So it serves definitely two purposes there, where it's helping, the person that you're asking in many ways, because they're going to be, hey, honored that you even asked me. But then secondly, you're going to be able to pick up on things, grow that network. So that's massive. And you're saying, start that in even dental school. If you're listening to this in dental school right now, start that process now.
Yeah, right. Why not? Right.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, so after that, we kind of move into, we know what kind of practice we want to purchase. We know that, this is kind of our vision for where we want to be. You have the 3 phases that I know that you help your clients through. Let's start with phase 1, Brian. What is phase 1? What does the timelines look like on that? What should people be doing in that first phase when acquiring a practice?
So let's paint a picture here. I'll tell a story of a dentist I'm working with in California. And I'll answer your question through the eyes of a client. Okay, so a client calls me up. They have done their homework. They browsed a few broker listings online in their pajamas at 11 o'clock at night. But actually, how they found their practice was through their personal network of other dentists. Surprise, surprise. And by the way, side note, that's where all the good practices are for sale. They don't tend to be online. They can be, but they don't tend to be. So this dentist calls me up, and this is the start of phase one is, hey, Brian, I think I found a practice I may want to buy. That's the start of the process. Okay. You've seen an office, you've seen some listing, you've got a document with some numbers on it, maybe, right? This is the start of the process. The end of phase one is you think you want to put in an offer on this practice. So what happens in the middle of phase one is an analysis of that office, both in person and from a numbers perspective. Okay, so the in-person isn't hard. Most dentists I talk with, they can do this pretty intuitively. They drive up to the office, they shake hands usually after hours or on the weekend with the doctor. They walk around, they see the operatories and the equipment. They get a sense for the philosophy of the seller. Are you kind of a drill and fill? Do you put a crown on everything that moves? What is your style, right? And then they think to themselves, could I live here? Does this office, do I get good vibes or creepy vibes? If it's good, now there's the number side of things. Now this is where me or someone like me would come into play, okay? You need an accountant for this process, but it doesn't have to be a dental tax person, okay? So it can be someone that just does acquisitions, like me. A dental CPA is a good option. Okay, and what they're looking for is they're going to answer 3 questions for you. From a numbers perspective, is this a good practice to buy? Okay. Collections, profitability, trends. We're looking at production history. I'm looking at demographics. I'm looking at their website, all kinds of different data points to answer the question, numbers-wise, is this good? Question number 2 is the asking price fair? Or what is a fair price to pay for this practice? Okay? That's my job. I'll do the valuation. I'll let you know how my number compares to the sellers or the brokers. And then big question number 3 is, how much money would I make if I bought this practice? Got to know that, right? Not because you're greedy, but because this is an investment, and you'd be silly not to ask that question. And probably you're giving up an associate salary on top of this, right? So that's the end of phase one is, okay, I think I want to put in an offer. Does that answer your question, Shane?
Yep, absolutely. And with those 3 steps, so is it a good practice to buy? Just kind of to recap here, looking at production, demographics in the area. Second, is the price fair? Someone like Brian's team would be able to help you out on that, be able to make sure that it's with what the seller is also listing at, and kind of go from there. And then the third, how much would you make if you purchased that practice? So that's kind of your starting point there, checking off those boxes, kind of moving forward at that point. Now, as far as the second phase, if those things align and look healthy, what's the next phase from there?
Yeah, the next phase is an offer and build out your team. Okay. So what we do for our clients, we actually will help write the offer, sometimes called an LOI or letter of intent, right? And that's an offer to purchase a business. And it'll have a price on there, right? So my California client, she was looking at a practice that was listed for $775,000. Yeah. When we did our valuation, we valued the practice as $747,000. So a difference of 28 grand. And the discussion that we had to have before this client submitted her offer was, hey, is it worth it to try to negotiate? Or is there somewhere else in the deal that you want to win and maybe make up that part of that 28 grand, or you feel like something else is worth it to you? And in this case, and this isn't the answer for everybody, but in this case, the doctor said, you know what, Brian, I don't want to ruin the goodwill with this seller. I'm willing to make a full price offer. So she did, $775,000. But there could be some negotiation that happens there. That's part of this process. And assuming that the negotiations end with a thumbs up, everybody's on board, seller wants to sell to you, you want to buy from the seller, you're going to need to do a couple other things in this phase. Number 1 is to get some banks on board. I recommend 2, no more than 3. And there are some reasons for that we can get into if you want, but the quick version is bankers all know each other. Everybody talks. Everybody knows if you're applying with different banks. Okay, so you're going to ruin your chances of the best rate if you have too many banks at the table, but 2 to 3 is acceptable. And then you're going to need to hire a lawyer. Okay, now let me make one note. Lawyer, obviously crucial. Lawyer's going to cost some money. I'm going to cost some money. And if you have to choose between an accountant and a lawyer, you always choose the lawyer. Okay. If you don't have enough money for both, you got to pick the lawyer. Lawyer is a do not stop, do not pass go, go directly to jail if you don't use a lawyer, right? So lawyer's crucial, but they can wait until right around the time you're making an offer or right after you've accepted an offer.
Okay. And when you're in that timeline of moving along with all this, like phase two, finding and hiring a lawyer, what has been, and the CPA even, what has been your experience as far as at what stages should someone be looking at these things even before they've started the phase one? Should they be looking at potential attorneys, potential accountants that they may want to potentially work with before they get to that stage to kind of do their due diligence?
Yeah, right. I would be kind of a hypocrite if I said no, right? I mean, I just told these dentists to build out their network. And why can't their network? I think their network should lean heavily towards other dentists. But why not have a Brian Hanks in your network? A dental attorney from the Northeast, a dental attorney from the Southwest. Some dental attorneys are better than others, and you want to get a feel for them. And yeah, get to know the bankers in your area. Sure, get to know the equipment reps in your area. They're going to have some good insight and knowledge as to who's. So short answer, yes. Longer answer is a bank can't give you, there's no such thing as a pre-approval, right? Every bank is going to underwrite each deal separately, and each deal depends on the practice you're looking at. So you can build a good relationship, but it's just a little bit different than a home purchase or getting a lease for a brand new startup. There is no pre-approval because you got to wait till you find that practice.
Yeah. Awesome. Great advice there. Now, those stages, is there a typical timeline that happens between, excuse me, checking off those boxes of getting the, fair price on the practice, checking the demographics, all of that, and kind of moving into that stage, 2 of this? Is there a certain timeline that you typically see on how that plays out? Month, 2 month, 3 months, so on?
Yeah, great question. So I'll give you a total time, and then I'll break it down for you a little bit. But my average client, from the moment they find a practice they might be interested in, to the moment they close and have keys and a bank loan has wired money somewhere, in 2022, my average client was 108 days. So just over 3 months. All right. Okay. Now, how that breaks down is that phase one process, the process of doing some initial due diligence or just an initial look, it's got to be lightning fast, okay? Because the first step in the process probably was a phone call with the seller, maybe a visit to the actual practice. And now the seller is thinking, hey, I just met, Shane seems like a sharp guy. He has a sweet suit jacket on. Like, why? Like, I hope he buys my practice. And if you wait 2, 3, 4 weeks, the air's out of the balloon, right? So for my clients, we promise within 5 business days or less, an answer, answers to all your questions, how much, what's a good offer price, how much you're going to make, all of that. So you want to be really fast with phase one. And then phase two, banking, legal. From phase two to close is kind of the rest of the time, right? It's getting the lawyers involved, getting bank loans approval, finishing the due diligence, like doing chart audits and equipment audits and things like that. Banking, I'd say from a moment that you put in an application to an approval, 3-ish weeks, give or take. And lawyers are working on documents for anywhere from 30 days to 90 days, depending on how fast the parties are.
Awesome. So things can get moving fairly quickly then, and that seems ideal to keep that momentum, behind your sales, so to speak.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, and this is another reason why smart people will hear an implied recommendation here, and the implied recommendation is you work with someone who does this a lot. Okay. So a dental or a lawyer who also does some estate planning and sometimes does some litigation for car accidents, and then once last year helped their brother-in-law with a dental purchase. You may have a personal relationship with that attorney, but it's going to be slow, right? It's going to slow things down, and that's going to cost you somewhere in the deal. So I'd get a qualified, my preference, flat fee-based dental attorney that only does dental transitions, right? Same with me. I only do dental acquisitions. So on and so forth, because things move quicker.
Yeah, amen. Yeah, we hear that, the marketing with some startups, which, is such a vital time at the very, very beginning of the stage to be marketing, even before the practice opens. And sometimes I'll hear, my brother's cousin's, friend does marketing on the side, and he's going to help me do the website, all these things. I'm like, okay, that's an option, but this is precious time here with all of these different things when you're opening a business, you got to make sure people have been there, done that. So that's a huge takeaway. And that's the thing that I just love about Facebook, is, with as many negatives that there is to social media and the things that happen on there, the network that you can build off of these platforms is just amazing. Like sitting here, the two of us, across the country from each other, seeing each other through these groups, and now being able to say, hey, I know somebody who can help you, along this journey. Like they do great work, here you go. The same thing with all of these practice owners or potential practice owners is, this is at literally your fingertips if you're looking, staying in these groups, staying active. It's just a powerful tool to say the least.
Did I hear you say that you should build your network? Did I hear that right, Shane?
It's exactly what I was saying. Go back to Brian's point, build that network, start it yesterday, right? And Excel over Google Sheets preferably is the other thing I picked up there. Okay, so let's talk about kind of this final stage here. This is phase 3 of this process. So what are the things that we are doing in phase 3? What is required from the dentist? What's some of the things that someone like you would be doing in this stage? What does that look like?
Everything else the dentist has heard they need to do before they actually run a business. Okay, so it's good. I have 108 items. I go through a checklist with all my buyers, but it's everything you can think of, from opening the business entity to IRS filings. You got to pick a payroll company. You got to pick a business checking account, a credit card. You got to get that merchant services credit card reader at the front desk and that poster in the break room that has the minimum wage on it, right? Everything on that list is something we either do for our clients or we walk them through the process. Basically, the goal here, Shane, is you want to walk through the doors as an owner, whether it's a startup or an acquisition. You want to be able to focus on your patients and staff. That's who you want to focus. What you don't want to be is going, oh crap, did I get a payroll? Something? Don't we need to run payroll soon? Right now, that's taking time and energy away from the procedure you're about to do in 15 minutes. So get everything done that you can before you run that business, and work with the seller. And there's letters, and anyway, there's a long list of things, and we'll help you with all of it.
There's nothing worse than starting a new business. I'm guilty of this. Years ago when I started this company, it was like, do I have a tax ID number? Like, what I mean? Like little things like that take you away, like you said, from producing and doing what you need to be doing. Man, I wish I would have had somebody like that, starting my business at the time, and rather than learning through the hard way, as they say. So let me ask this, because, which by the way, Brian, definitely follow them on Instagram. What's your Instagram handle? We'll put it in the show notes too.
Dental Buyer Advocates. Yep.
Okay, Dental Buyer Advocates. I was, just kind of scrolling through the other day, and one of the things that you kind of brought it up earlier is a lot of these great practice opportunities oftentimes never make it online to these listings. And I saw, you had a listing, I think it was in Washington State. This town looked like straight out of the Goonies, scene. It looked like an awesome place. And, those little things like that, just following somebody who sees these different opportunities and listings that come up, man, you could really be sitting on a gold mine potentially that nobody else is aware of. Can you just kind of talk a little bit about how you've seen that happen in your experience with some of your clients who are looking, and next thing you know, somebody backs out of an old deal, whatever the case is, and boom, there's an opening, ready to go.
Seller was a family friend of mine and said, hey, Brian, can you do a valuation? I don't normally work with sellers, but in this case, I said, sure, no problem. I'll do a valuation for you because you already know this buyer. Well, the buyer backed out. And the sellers are, oh no, what do we do now? And I said, well, you can hire a broker. Well, how much is that going to cost me? Oh, about 10%, or in your case, $150,000. And they went, oh, that's a lot of money. I sure wish we knew a buyer. I said, hey, I've got an Instagram account. Let me post it for you. Shane, no joke. Just this morning, got a call, or I got an email or a DM last night. I connected the buyer. Seller reached out to me about 4 hours ago and said, hey, this buyer is amazing. And they're right, 40 minutes away. Can you send me an NDA? We need to get this thing moving. We think we found our buyer. Now, and this buyer, I don't know, right? They just messaged
just through Instagram,
and so it's those. I have story after story, not me either, right? Just buyers who reached out, or a friend in the Navy connected them with this person who. So it really is. It can feel random. But if you're watching for the patterns, it's not random. It's the people that are out there connecting, having conversations, doing the coffees, showing up at the study club meetings, go flying to the Hinman, whatever. Like, those are the people who consistently, time after time, are quote unquote lucky, right, with these opportunities they find.
Well, I know you've done a lot of these. You've helped a lot of dentists throughout this process. And one of the things that we always like to do as we kind of wind down the show here is talk about if there's one just huge piece of advice that you've seen over your experiences in doing this over the years, whether it's a mistake to avoid or one thing that you've seen just save people time and time again. If somebody's considering practice ownership right now, what is something that they should do to ensure that that process is going to be as smooth and as fruitful as possible for them?
Okay, it's a dark horse recommendation. I don't think your audience is you're going to expect me to say something about save some cash, have a better network. No, this is it. Okay, Shane, I'm going to tell you the secret. Learn how to manage people. Here's what I mean specifically. One-on-ones with people, build relationships with your staff especially. Learn how to give positive and negative feedback to someone who's late and someone who's awesome at work. Learn how to coach, learn how to delegate. If you can do management of people, everything becomes easier. Dentistry is a people business. And do I mean manage patients? Kind of. I don't really mean manage in the sense of the boss to employee relationship. What I actually mean is manage your staff well. Help them understand your goals, like you like them, right? Everybody's pulling in the same direction. So many dentists. And by the way, so many bosses nationwide, right? How many good bosses have you had versus bad bosses? If you can learn to be a good boss, everything becomes easier. Whether you start up, whether you buy, whether you stay an associate for your entire career, you're going to manage people. You're the dentist. You're going to manage people, learn how to do it. It's a learnable process.
You nailed it on the head, but you're in the people business when it comes to dentistry. You're not in the teeth business. You are in the people business. And any good resources that you recommend? I'm actually in the process right now of rereading Good to Great by Jim Collins. And that's an all-time that I highly recommend when it talks about just making sure you have the right people in the right place, on the team. They call it right seat on the bus. But any recommendations that you have for our audience who are wanting to really take you up on that and start to learn how to manage people?
I got a book and a podcast. The book is Traction, Gino Wickman, fantastic book.
Okay. We're implementing EOS into our company literally with an implementer as we speak.
And then I've got a podcast for you. It's free, and it'll give you step-by-step instructions on how to manage people. It's called Manager Tools. Manager Tools. They're fantastic. I've never heard anything better. It's literally changed my life.
Awesome. We'll put a link to that in the show notes below. We'll also put a link to Gino Wickman's Traction. Again, great book. When you look at just managing and running a business, was doing it for years before we started implementing EOS, which stands for Entrepreneur Operating System, for those of you who haven't heard of it. Fascinating and life-changing, to say the least, already for us. So I love those recommendations there. Brian, we could talk for 2 more hours on a number of different topics. I'm sure I'd love to bring you on again some other time. But as we're kind of wrapping up here, thank you so much for sharing the insights, your experiences with our audience. It really means the world to us. For those listening, and if they're like, man, I really want to reach out to Brian and his team and see if maybe they can help me on this journey, what's the best way that they can reach out to you and set up a time to maybe chat?
I've got a book a call feature on my website, dentalbuyeradvocates.com. If you can't remember that, you can go to Amazon and find the book, How to Buy a Dental Practice. And if you're listening to this podcast, I've got one also. It's free, and it's maybe not quite as good as, but hopefully as helpful as Shane's, and it's Practice Purchased. So if you go to the Practice Purchased podcast, you'll find links and other information on the process of buying a practice.
Awesome. Man, thank you so much, Brian. We'll be sure to put all that information in the show notes for all of you listening. Definitely reach out to Dental Buyer Advocates, reach out to the team. They're doing amazing things. Heard nothing but great things about them. That's why we brought them on the podcast. And Brian, thanks again for hopping on, and let's do it again one of these days.
It's been an honor. I'd love to do it.